Welcome back to another episode of Trading Secrets. Today, I am joined by one of Bachelor Nation's biggest stars and fan favorite of the franchise, Ben Higgins. Ben initially won over the hearts of viewers during his time on The Bachelorette, and eventually becoming the Bachelor himself. Following his time on the shows, Ben embarked on numerous ventures, entrepreneurial and otherwise, with a mission to help organizations connect more deeply with their employees and customers. In 2017, Ben co-founded Generous Coffee, a company dedicated to raising money through its operation to create jobs, feed children, improve education, and empower communities to eliminate poverty around the world. Outside of his socially conscious work, he maintains a connection to the one and only Bachelor Nation by co-hosting the Bachelor-focused Almost Famous podcast with Ashley I, which has accumulated over 80 plus million downloads a day. You could probably even correct me. It's probably higher than that. It started, I think, in March of 2017. Tens of thousands of reviews, absolutely killing it with iHeart. Ben's time on the show may not have had the fairy tale ending, but he has fully taken advantage of his opportunities post-show and finding his way to his now wife, Jessica Clark Higgins. Various business endeavors, writing a book, hosting shows around the country, and today we are going to discuss it all with the one and only Ben Higgins. Ben, thank you so much for being on Trading Secrets.
This is a dream. I've waited for the day that I can sit down with some good talks in a car, but we never got to record them. I'm very excited to be here.
We have, and Ben, since the day I met you, which is the second I got off the show, if you remember, for the iHeartRadio Festival 2018, and I would say to the people I know, I'm like, I don't know if he's just bullshitting or he's just that nice. I can confirm all of these years when he says this stuff, he's just that nice of a guy. So thank you for coming on.
Oh man, I really did. I was going to try this a few months ago. It didn't work out. Now we get to sit down and talk. This is a really great show that I like listening to. I've listened to some of your biggest episodes in the past, and so I'm pumped to sit down and talk.
I love it. All right, let's go all the way back before you were on The Bachelorette, but you're IT sales, back office processing and financial services space. What was the name of the company? How long were you working there before you decided to go on The Bachelorette?
Yeah, so I graduated from college, moved to South America because I had no job offers out of college, and I looked and I tried. Came back to the U.S. and was working at a youth center in Warsaw, Indiana, and somebody that I cared deeply about, who I was dating at the time, once I came back, said, Ben, you're never going to leave Indiana. And she wasn't wrong, but it hit a chord with me because I'm an only child, and so I really wanted to prove that I could get out and do something on my own. And so then my boss, a few weeks later, said, Ben, you got to get out of here. You're going to be stuck here. She said, my brother, the vice president of a company in Denver that does back office processing in the financial services space, he has a job opening as a business analyst. He's willing to hire you on the spot because I've given him your name. And I said, okay, I'm in. And I moved out to Denver, took this job. It was called Talysis. So we did all the settlement and clearing for brokerage firms who were selling assets. My first job was writing the user manuals for the software that we were implementing and doing the implementation into these new companies. I was terrible at it. I talk for a living now. I was writing user manuals for a living back then. And so over time, I moved into sales and then business development.
How old were you at this point when you were in this job?
So I started the job when I was 23.
Okay.
I did the show, the Bachelorette, when I was 25, turning 26. I actually kept that job for another 2 years after I was the Bachelor, and I left the job in 2018.
Wait, so you were with this job while you were a contestant on The Bachelorette and while you were the lead on The Bachelor?
I was.
And they let you keep your job?
They did. I just took a sabbatical. I think for me back then, this show was so different in terms of social media following. Instagram had just gotten started.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories of the past were people doing club appearances. That's not me. I knew it was never going to be me, but that's how they were generating their revenue from coming on the show. I would not have gone on the show at all unless my company gave me approval to take the sabbatical. And they did both times.
What were you making before you went on the show at this job?
When I started, it was $33,000 a year.
Okay, $33,000, and you were gonna pass on the opportunity to go on The Bachelorette for $33,000 a year.
Insurance.
Insurance. Yeah. That's an old Midwest mentality. Yeah. As a Buffalo guy, I know that you can't lose your pension, you can't lose your insurance. All right, so you then go on the show, $33,000. You go on The Bachelorette, and you are now America's sweetheart when you get off that show. What was the first transition professionally?
I went back to Talysis. It was a really weird life, as you can imagine. The show is airing, and I'm in the basement in a cubicle in an office in a company that's not doing well at the time. Nowadays, doesn't even exist. It failed a year after I left, not because I left, but because I could see the red flags. And so I went back to work, back to the cubicle. And then I think they asked me to be the Bachelor, but it was 2.5 months until they really approached me. And at that time I had been hearing rumors of other people getting approached to be the Bachelor from that season. And so I had moved on. I'd started focusing back on work, and I was fully invested in just, hey, my life is back in the office, and this thing didn't work for me.
So you do reality TV, you're on Caitlin's season, you get off, you go back to work, and in no way, shape, or form does your future at all look like TV, media, entertainment at all from Ben's vision.
No, not at all. No.
But then you blow up. You are America's sweetheart. The season airs. Caitlin's season was one of the best seasons ever of the franchise. How did that impact any type of monetization and your social media before you were selected as the Bachelor?
Really none, because I remember when I got announced as the Bachelor, I think I had at that point 10,000 followers. So even after Caitlin's
Wait a second.
season,
What?
Yeah. So
when you were announced as the Bachelor, 10,000 followers?
10,000 followers. Because Instagram was still in the beta phase. Nobody was following people. It's still Facebook at the time.
It was 2016-ish?
Yeah,
2017?
Yeah. And so people weren't really gravitating towards these people like they were maybe my season of The Bachelor, which was 6 months later. It was the flipping point. I was in the time where people were still, nobody's really capitalizing on social media.
Okay. And you mentioned club appearances. Did you do any club appearances in this time frame before being the Bachelor?
No.
Okay. So you didn't make one penny off being on the Bachelorette before you got named the Bachelor?
Nothing significant that I can remember. I remember there was nothing in my mind that thought this could be a consistent source of income.
Okay. Final four in your season. After the show, did you guys talk about, hey, I might be the Bachelor, or what are you going to do with this platform? Did you guys have that continuity where you're talking about how do we use this as an opportunity?
Jared and I did.
Okay.
And Nick and I did at some level. But then in that period of time, I lost those friendships or being able to communicate with them because they went on Paradise. And so I felt like the outsider then at that point because I wasn't asked to go. I wasn't asked to be involved in that.
Would you have gone if you were asked?
If I was not the Bachelor and they would have asked me to go, I think I would have. I was really not enjoying my job.
Yeah.
And I knew how these people were being compensated for going on Paradise. And I was like, that seems like a decent path. I was ready to leave Talasis at that point. I checked out, but I just didn't know where I could go to find a new job.
When they talked to you about being the Bachelor, knowing that you would have been on Paradise during the season that I was on, I think we talked to you about this. Me, Blake, and Colton were so close that we told each other every single call we received, every contract. We told each other every question they asked in an interview. Were you talking to Nick? Were you talking to Jared? Like, hey, are you getting the call? Did you sign the contract? Did that happen?
No, I really wasn't. I think there's a level of envy that I had at the time, not maybe they felt, but because I wasn't getting approached like I thought others were, or I was hearing rumors of others, I just took a step back. I didn't want to hear about it. I was in a season of chaos, right? I just admitted to the world that I felt unlovable, that I had some deep insecurities in my life. I had just been removed from a show that was very hard for me to go through. It was uncomfortable for me. I'm from a small town. I moved out here. I wasn't good at my job, and I had a lot of like deep-seated insecurities. So I was just processing that. I think I did talk to Jared, and I think Jared and I had spoken about it. And Jared would always be in the camp of, I remember a phone call I had with him once where he was like, you're going to be the next Bachelor.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to ask you. But that's probably as far as I went with them.
Okay. When they do approach you, do you at all negotiate anything in the contract, or you just like, sign me up, I'll be there tomorrow?
I remember when they called. I was actually in St. Pete at Raymond James, which is my account at the time. I was staying in a hotel that I was pretty much living at. I get a phone call from them, and I walk into the bedroom and I sit down. I still remember it. And they said, hey, we want you to be the next Bachelor. And I said, okay.
Sure.
And they said, you have 48 hours or something to think about it. And I said, okay. So I called my family, and that was the end of that talk. And then I called them back and I said, hey, I am interested. I would like to do this. We started talking about when they were going to announce it and all of that. And then the contract came. And so that was the first time I'd really seen the contract to being the Bachelor. And I did at that point hire an attorney, but I didn't hire an agent. I didn't have any representation. So I was negotiating on my behalf, but having it checked and balanced through an attorney to make sure that I guess I was signing away my rights, but I negotiated on my own behalf.
Okay. Let me guess. I think you've talked about this before. Maybe you haven't, but $50,000 to be the Bachelor?
Yeah. around there.
I think you've talked about it before.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I don't know if I've ever publicly said exactly the amount.
Oh, okay.
But I'm all for doing it. I figured it was going to be a question. I was trying to think back.
Yeah.
It was, I know for a fact it was near 50,000, less than 80. It was somewhere in that range. There was some perks that I think I negotiated into it. But yeah, it was world-changing money for me, life-changing money for me, but it was not like, it was not lifestyle changing money.
All right. So you go on the journey, you tell work again, you're going to be on another sabbatical. They check off unpaid sabbatical. You start as the Bachelor. Yeah. At this point, most people that start day one as the lead are thinking about like, what this could turn into, other opportunities. For some reason, I truly believe that wasn't the case for you. I feel like you were just like, okay, I got another shot. I'm actually going to find my person. I don't think that's the case for 99% of the leads. For you, I think it might have been. Was it?
Yeah, it was. I had a lot of conversations, and I got to give credit to Chris Harrison through this process. He was an advisor through even the negotiation of the contract, which there was some negotiation. And I have said this publicly, I think what The Bachelor does, and I don't know this for certain, but it's always been what I've heard, is they know your annual salary, which at the time obviously was not astronomical. But I was following people like Chris Soules, who has thousands of acres in Iowa and makes a lot of money farming. And so I think they take that, and that comes into how they compensate you to be the lead, is based on what you're making the previous year. And for them to offer me the amount of money they were, for me, I was like, yes. Again, I didn't love my job. This was not a stepping stone into a new chapter of life, but it was a new career for at least a period of time for me. But when it came down to it for me, I really was excited about the opportunity to be the Bachelor, not really knowing what that meant. And I called Chris Harrison, and I've had some really poignant conversation with him. And he told me, he goes, Ben, you've got to do something with this. Like, I know you're the Bachelor, and I know that you want to do the right thing here, and you want to walk through this process well, but you also have to look out for yourself in this. You have to be thinking about what's next. What can you do with this newfound platform, this newfound recognition? And that really started to churn a little bit inside my head. I just didn't still know what that looked like. I still didn't know how to think about that, but also at the time care for the people that were coming onto the show to try to date.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so you take America by storm. You finish filming The Bachelor, then airs. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how you pivoted. But what was the follower count you had after the show, after it was aired?
It was probably about 1 million to, it's probably what is today, 1.1, 1.2 million.
So you went from 10,000 from the day being named The Bachelor to 1.2 million just like that after the show's aired.
Yeah, I mean, it skyrocketed.
It skyrocketed. Now, I'm going to get into some of the post-show opportunities that came your way, because with that transition, it must have come big. Before I do, you found yourself in what I would say, I don't know, maybe I'm not going to say the first controversy of your life, but the first controversy that you've ever had just publicly, because you were America's sweetheart, you were the guy, and you tell two people that you love them, and one's Lauren, one's JoJo. You end up with Lauren. JoJo, of course, then becomes the Bachelorette. I don't want to get into the weeds of all that and how it happened. What I do want to know is, how did you deal with some of the first time you received public negativity, and how much did that impact other areas of your life, whether personally, professionally, or financially?
Yeah, for me, it was, I did not expect to get the criticism I did, knowing what I had done. Like, when it aired, I was not expecting that to be the most controversial piece of my season. It was not on my mind. It was not something I was worried about. And then it happened, and it did feel like people responded in droves with criticism. I think there's a piece of that where I set myself up for failure. I think the show set me up for a little bit of failure, where the tagline of my season was the perfect Ben. And I think anytime you show somebody or expect somebody to be perfect as a human, one, people just don't like it. Mm-hmm. People don't like, if people call me perfect today, I'd say, one, that's not true. Two, like, it's not something that I enjoy hearing about myself. So when I messed up, or when I said that, I think people were looking for a reason to criticize. They love the underdog. They don't like the person that's being put on a pedestal. So I say it comes out, there's criticism to it. In fact, that was maybe, it's odd if I look back on that time, that was the one piece of criticism, though, that didn't affect me personally about how I felt about myself. There was other pieces that did. It affected my romantic relationship with Lauren deeply, it became a massive conversation for us behind the scenes of how could I do that? How could I propose to her the day after I do that? Those were fair questions. Those were fair concerns, not questions I necessarily had answers to. There wasn't a good answer that would make her feel better, that I wasn't trying to explain myself out of it. But the reason that it didn't affect me personally is because I've always known my intentions and why I said that. I don't think it was wise of me to say to them, I don't think I should have communicated it outwardly.
Yeah.
But inwardly, it's how I felt. And I did it because I wanted them both to know how special they were to me at that time in my life. And I felt really good about those intentions. And so I held on to that. There's other things like, hey, I'm boring. Hey, he's not as ripped as other bachelors. Like physical stuff and personality stuff affect me a lot more than my intentions in that moment.
Okay, let me draw those tough experiences back to kind of career stuff. So you're hearing all this noise. You're not the ripped bachelor. You let a girl on and you shouldn't have. She becomes the bachelorette. You clearly said it had an impact on your relationship. Are you a firm believer that when your personal relationships are going through it, you separate it from work and finances and just move those two things in different directions? Or do you feel like there was some bleed over, some crossover into the other worlds as you're trying to navigate 1.1 million followers, as you're trying to make some money and capitalize on this?
Yeah, I think for us, I made some really poor decisions. I think Laura and I together made some really poor decisions during that time. There was no me putting my foot down, but the show came to us and said, hey, we want to do a follow-up show with the two of you, Ben and Lauren Happily Ever After. And the concept at the time was I was running for office, and there's a whole mess behind the scenes of what happened there. But the agreement was that they were going to support me in my run for office. Politics looked a lot different back then.
Yeah.
What the two parties stood for looked a lot different back then.
I gotta stop. How the fuck do you go from selling IT to being on The Bachelor and now you're gonna be in politics? Whose idea was this?
This was always my idea. So I've always wanted to be a representative of a community. Okay. And that ties into what I'm doing today and where I found my lane outside of politics. But there was always this desire to represent people, to be involved in the story of a community being built or the people of the community being sustained. And I had mentioned this many times on the show, just in private, that it was, and I enjoy learning about politics, not as much today as I did back then. I've kind of separated myself from that passion in my life. The show said they wanted to do a kind of a docuseries on it and follow Laura and I's life and Laura and I's life as I ran and kind of the nitty-gritty.
You have a hard time keeping my face straight.
I know, it's wild, right?
President Ben Higgins, I see it. Okay, keep going.
And it was 5:00 meetings for breakfast with people telling me what issues were important to them, talking through the controversial issues of the day, which back then was like public schools and private schools and charter schools. It wasn't what we're talking about today. And at some point, then I got put on the ballot. And unfortunately, due to some legal matters that the network ran into, they couldn't film and air a docuseries that just represented me. It had to also represent the incumbent, which was my opponent of the opposite party.
Who was your incumbent?
I forget his name right now. Okay. But he was in office then for 2 terms at that point. They say, hey, legally, like, you got to get out. And I said, I can't get out. This is my district. This is my neighborhood. These are like the people that have supported me. And they said, you're under contract for a show. We got to still do a show. And so like you can run for office and film a show on the side, or you can choose you can choose the drop. And at the point I couldn't, in a relationship that was already tumultuous, I could not imagine myself doing both those things. It would have ruined me and it wouldn't have put myself in a good place to run and represent well. So we decided to do Ben and Lauren Happily Ever After, which was a show then about our life and about the things we were trying to figure out. The problem with that, and to go back to your original question here, it was a really good business decision for us because we were not married. We were 2 separate pieces of talent, but separately.
$100,000 each.
Yeah. And then.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they had,
that was a good guess.
Yeah. And then they used our house to film it. So obviously then there's the rental income for them to film a show in our home.
Did you split the rental income, or it was your home?
Yeah, we split it at the time. I think we split it up until the very end.
Okay, hang on. One question, because I don't want to oversee it. State representative, do you have any, I just have no idea. It's a world we've never explored on this show. Any idea what they're compensated if you do get elected?
Oh, it's not much. I think it's somewhere around the $30,000 range.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a well-paid position.
Yeah,
it would not be my full-time job.
Sure, it'd be a side
it's
thing.
very few people's full-time job. Usually you're an attorney or a doctor or a software salesman.
Okay, one other question too, and then I'm going to get back to it. I just don't want to lose it. You get offered this show. ABC is notorious and the best way ever for supporting a lot of their leads to do cool things, to do other shows. We just saw Charity. She's going on Dancing with the Stars. Caitlin went on Dancing with the Stars and won. Like, it's really awesome that they do that. I'm assuming this was an ABC show, and were there any other opportunities presented to you? Or
It was an ABC show.
It was an ABC show.
It was an ABC show, and I never got asked to do anything else.
Okay.
So that was never an offer, never on the table for me.
Got it.
There was probably a period of time where I could have pushed for that, but I talked to Sean Lowe, and Sean Lowe had told me, hey, if you can at any level not do Dancing with the Stars, it's going to be better for your relationship.
Wow.
It's really hard on a relationship. There's a lot of time. And if you're having any issues post-show, do your best to not go on that show.
Even if your relationship is ironclad and you are the strongest person in the world and you have no form of insecurities, which is impossible, we all do, that show will beat your relationship up.
Yeah.
100%.
It just does, right?
It absolutely does.
That was the advice that was given to me. And we were struggling, trying to work through stuff, and we'd have really great times and really hard times. And I think both of us had said, hey, that's not for us.
Yeah.
Now, don't forget here, I'm still working at Talasys. I have not left my job yet.
This is all insane. Okay,
Yeah,
politician, Talasys, Bachelor. Now you're filming the show, $100K each. You got the rent. What happens with the show?
The show airs on Freeform, ABC Family.
Give me a time frame. Before Nick is announced as The Bachelor or no?
During it. We're filming the show when Nick is announced as The Bachelor. In fact, there's a scene where he gives me a call and tells me he's going to be the next Bachelor.
When you got that call, how'd you feel?
Fine. I was doing my thing. He had worked hard.
He earned his stripes.
He earned his stripes, right? That was Pro's Paradise. He had gone on 2 seasons of The Bachelorette. I like Nick. I've always got along with Nick. I enjoy being around him. He's always been very interesting to me. And so when he was announced when he was going to be The Bachelor, I think there was a moment where I was excited for him to be The Bachelor.
Okay.
But at that point in time, you got to think there was very little time for me to like sulk or have any envy or jealousy. And I was in a relationship from that show.
You're happy. You're good.
At that point, I felt like, hey, I'm going to have deep involvement in this show for years to come. It doesn't matter who the lead is. I'm going to be around.
Yeah.
And I was excited about that. That was a new thought in my head. So we filmed the show. It airs. And it's in the midst of stuff that was already hard for us. This show is being filmed at the same time for 10 to 12 hours a day in my 700 square foot house that black vans are parked outside. Our garage was their production studio. There were people in the house at 7 a.m. leaving at 10 p.m. like every day from tear down and set up with new light. And it just, I think there was many reasons why we didn't work as a couple. I think that show was going to be what I'll say impossible for us to have a healthy relationship through it and coming out of it, because we became working partners. We had no time, any time that we had privately away from the cameras, we were exhausted or I was working. And so we weren't sitting down and being like, how are you? Like the normal stuff that now I have with Jessica, like, how are you doing? How do you feel about our relationship?
Yeah.
That was gone, and it had been gone for months. And so we were in survival mode at that point.
Interesting. So that is an example of when personal and professional can collide and the results can be catastrophic to just everything, to your launch pad with your career, to your personal happiness, to all those things. It's interesting. We're going to get into a bunch of your career stuff after this time in your life, but I do want to quickly touch on when you did break up. Talk to me a little bit about how that impacted everything within the momentum you had built on Instagram, on monetization, on brand building, on all the things that were in your trajectory. Did it impact it? If so, how?
Massively. One, it was a real breakup. And so you are affected, and you, at least for me, how I handled it was I went and became a recluse in a lot of ways. I was still working a job, and those people at the job now knew about my breakup. They had seen me cry on television. And then the show at that point, and this isn't a secret, it was aired on Happily Ever After. They had asked us to air our wedding on TV. They were going to cover it and pay us to do it. And I think the misconception there at the time was that I had cold feet. In a sense, I did. I think we both did. Yeah. We weren't ready. Our relationship was holding on by a thread, and then they were going to film then leading up to this wedding. So we would have had no time to recalibrate and see if this was a healthy relationship or not, or if we get married or not. We go head first. And that's why I said I think I can speak for myself. I can't speak for Lauren, but obviously we're in two different places today and very happy. I think doing that show was a mistake for our relationship. It was not a mistake professionally necessarily, but it was a mistake for our romantic relationship. And so my priorities, I think, were misaligned at the time. I was young and naive to what I thought we could get through. So when we break up, obviously then Happily Ever After stops, which was supposed to go on for a couple of seasons.
Oh, shit.
They ended up replacing it with the Twins show that aired soon after.
Yeah.
And then you start to build, you go from being this happy couple that everybody's celebrating and cheering for the two of you to then I think your follower base gets split. They go from being fans of Ben and Lauren to then fans of Lauren or fans of Ben. And that one wasn't healthy for Lauren or myself. That was a really hard time, I think, to process through. But then obviously your following becomes a little more critical. They make a lot more assumptions. You're viewed in a different light. They start questioning your intentions for going on the show and your relationship off the show. And some of those intentions that they questioned were fair. I look back today, I'm like, yeah, I don't know why I said yes to that. Well, I think I do. It was the money and it was the opportunity.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it did stall the momentum and it changed my identity. I went from being on The Bachelor to being in a healthy relationship for a period of time to then being single again.
Yeah.
And that, I think, changed my identity drastically. And I wasn't necessarily ready to be single again. I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Knowing what you know now, asking as a friend here, but is there anything you would have done differently or any advice you'd give knowing the impact it had on all the areas of your life as someone who's like in the middle of it all?
Yeah. I think I can only speak to my experience, which was coming in a relationship with a really great person. I'd always viewed Lauren that way. I still view her that way. And so this was for the most part, a healthy relationship that went wrong. Two people with the best intentions just didn't work out. And so for me, I look back on that and I wish I would have held on to resentment for a shorter period of time. I wish I would have quickly, because we still had a good relationship in the day. I haven't talked to her in years. I wish I would have gotten to a place where I wanted to heal any wounds that were left out there, because we didn't. We just parted ways and never really healed the things that were said at the end or the things that were done at the end. I look back now as a married man and I'm like, it doesn't feel good to have past relationships that were healthy. Again, I'm speaking from a healthy relationship and then not ever have that closure. It doesn't feel good. And then I wish, and I didn't really until I met Jessica, quite honestly, which was years later. I wish I would have found a way to heal personally, but also found a way to think and view and speak of Lauren in a way that was more uplifting and less of a burden and less heavy on my heart.
Yeah.
Because I carried this weight of fear of, one, would I run into her at an event? Was somebody going to ask me about her in an interview? This was a very raw and real time for me. I wish I would have gotten to a place where I would have confidently said, hey, we didn't work out, but I care about this person.
Yeah.
And I would have known that she would have felt the same way if that's how she felt. But I think everybody heals differently. It takes different lengths of time for people to heal, especially from relationships that are real and raw and meaningful.
Yeah.
And I just wish I could have found a space to view it in a better light, because really I didn't for years.
Yeah. A lot of that hit home. I'm going to go to the next topic. Otherwise, I might hit me home. So let's go back down the professional world. Thank you for sharing that. It all landed. I heard you. I see you. I feel you. And I'll let that digest after, because I don't want to go down a road that'll take trading secrets in a whole different direction. All right. Bring it back. Here we go. After that, professionally, were you ever offered any other position within the franchise to go on Paradise or to be the Bachelor again?
I went on Winter Games.
That's right.
Yeah. So
How dare me skip your Winter Games session?
Winter Games. That was post-breakup. This was in January. I think we filmed that show. We had ended probably in, let's say, October.
Okay.
At that point, at least publicly ended in October.
Let me take a stab.
Yeah.
$500 a day.
Oh, I don't even know if I got paid to go on that show.
You had to get paid.
Did I get paid?
It
wasn't a lot. It wasn't a meaningful amount that I remember.
That you remember. Okay, I think that answers it.
The thing at the time, and the reason I said yes to that show, one, I thought the show was a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Similar how I feel about the Golden Bachelor. There's been very few shows in the franchise that I'm like, I like the idea of this show. I hope it works because I think it can help the franchise. I feel that way about the Golden Bachelor. That's why I pushed so hard to try to be involved in it. I felt that way about Winter Games. At the time, though, they had said, hey, Ben, we want you, because you're so fresh off this relationship and because you're so recent to being a lead on the show, what if you're like a sideline reporter? What if you're not a contestant on the show trying to find love? What if you're a sideline reporter who's living amongst the house and interviewing people as they're stepping out into these competitions and doing that role? And I was like, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a dream.
And so I said yes to that. Fly into Vermont. I landed in Vermont. I get a phone call from one of the producers that's like, hey, I know that's why you're out here, but little change of plans. We're worried. Which is so funny today looking at this, thinking about this. We're worried that if we let you not host this show, be a sideline reporter, then every lead after you will never participate if they don't end up in a happy relationship in any of our spinoff shows. They'll just want to be a host of them. They'll just want to be like the main person. They'll never want to participate again. And we're worried that will set a bad precedent.
Which, looking forward, that's only happened once, right, with Becca on Paradise. She's the only lead, right, that's gone on. I think so. We can fact check that for the recap.
We can fact check.
Okay, but
and so I said that makes sense to me. That makes sense for them. And so I was driving there. I was like, okay, and they're like, here's our new plan. You come on. You're a contestant. If you don't meet anybody, and I had been very clear, I am not ready to date. Like, I am not open to I had not dated at all at that point in time. They said, if you don't meet anybody through this experience, then you're going to obviously be let go. Like, you're not going to make it past week 1. And once you get let go, then we can revisit and see if maybe you could stick around to be like that support system.
Okay.
That sideline reporter. But they said, if you meet somebody, great, just get there. The first rose ceremony is being done by the women. I get a rose. Somebody there gives me one. I had no relationship. It was just like night 1, first impression. Somebody gives it to me. I'm around then for another week. Week 2, there's a rose ceremony. And somebody that I cared about, that I really liked, who was really there, like wanting to find somebody, did not have a partner yet. And so I just gave mine to her. No relationship at the time. Week 3 comes around. I am let go at that point.
Okay.
But that's 3 weeks. There's only 1 week left. I go home.
Okay. You didn't get the sideline
I didn't get the sideline gig. And I was really bummed about it because I thought that could be a new thing for me, a new chapter. I could see if I liked it or not. I could see if I was good at it or not. The show could see if I had any talent or not at it. But no, I just went on Winter Games. That was
But were you asked to be Paradise or go to be The Bachelor again at any point?
I never asked to do Paradise. There was a conversation I had with one of the producers leading up to Ari's season if I was interested in being The Bachelor again.
Were you?
No.
Okay.
No. I think there was at that point in time in my life, I had started to date again. I was not dating consistently. But I also, that period, the breakup was really hard on me emotionally. I don't want to over dramatize it. It just was like, it was it was just a really hard season of life where I felt like I was questioning myself. I was questioning my role and intentions. I'd also felt at that point in time, I could no longer do it. I felt like I could no longer be The Bachelor with the like same innocence, the same naivete, the same purity, the same hopes that I did before.
Yeah. That's one of the tough things about the whole thing is that and you obviously experience this, but you're losing your best friend, you're losing your other half. That's the reality. That's tough enough. Mm-hmm. And then you're dealing with all the other external noise. There's benefits to this world and there are negatives to this world, and the good comes with the bad comes with the good. So you have to take responsibility and own it. But it's just a really tough thing to navigate. And so I can imagine why, if you were asked to be The Bachelor again, you'd be like, no, that's not for me. Mm-hmm. But I am surprised because of anyone from the franchise, in my opinion, over Wells, over Nick. But I think of anyone that's been on the show, you have received the most support, the most hype, and the most campaigning from others to take a larger role within the franchise. And it felt like from 2016 to 2000, let's call it 21, it was 100% going to happen.
Yeah.
Did you too feel that? Did you think career-wise you were going to have a place larger than you ended up having, looking back at it now being 2023, almost 2024?
Yeah, yes, I did. One, people kept telling me I would.